Please come to a meditation posture. Now bring your body to a resting position. Transcending any worries from this day. Come to appreciate this time, this moment in life. Welcoming peace and calm, positivity to your heart. Your eyes gently closed, your awareness resting on your breath, maybe. Take a deep breath in and bring your shoulders all the way up, and then drop your shoulders. One more time, and drop your shoulders. Now, quickly, or with taking enough time, you may scan your body. The muscles of your eyes, gently resting. The crown of your head, free from any tension, any tightness. Thoughts come, thoughts go. The nervous system remain unaffected. As things get calmer and calmer with each second, we pay attention to what is happening here and now. The back of your head also relaxed. Now your shoulders, your facial expressions, your neck, upper back, mid back, and lower back are relaxed and in a straight line. The front of your body also relaxed. Notice all the movements of your chest as you breathe in and breathe out. we will come to the natural rhythm of your breath being revealed to you as you become quieter and quieter externally and internally in this process. You maintain an upright position and your sitting bones also relaxed. Below your waistline, the muscles down to your knees, the shin bones, the ankles, the soles of your feet, and your toes. All these parts are relaxed and you move away from any agitations by adjusting your body anytime during this meditation with mindfulness present. You are deeply rooted now to the ground below. Not moving much. Your attention comes to the rhythm of your in-breath and out-breath. Mindfully you breathe in and mindfully you breathe out. So bringing up mindfulness means bringing something wholesome to the experience. The past is left behind and the future is as yet to arrive. When we think of the past, we think of it now. When we think of the future, we think of it now. So all we have is this moment, now. Whatever is present, please recognize it, accept it, and move on. Maybe with a gentle smile that is also wholesome, lightens and relaxes your energy. Observe the breath coming in and breath going out. In your recognizing and accepting things, we neutralize things without feeding them so much, and then they fall away as we remain without identifying with anything, except we cultivate harmonious, spacious heart here and now, anchored in breath, however subtle it becomes, you remain aware of this experience. Taking a long breath, you know you are taking a long breath. Or if the breath is shorter, taking a short breath, you know you are taking a short breath. Noticing the movement of your body with each breath, being sensitive to these movements. Now you breathe in and breathe out. or see the process happening naturally. The breath becomes so subtle and almost disappears, and you rediscover it when it appears again. And that means the bodily feelings become less and less noticeable to you. Now bringing loving kindness to yourself, the warm, glowing, radiating loving kindness to your heart. You remain aware of the loving kindness. Seeing the world is in pain, somewhere someone is suffering from hunger, cruelty, and so on and so forth. You remain in compassion, radiating compassion toward oneself and others, the opposite of cruelty, healing your own wounds and those wounds of others. Now, with compassion, bring also joy, creating conditions for joy in your heart, celebrating those beings who are doing good deeds and celebrating your own achievements, the good you have contributed to, radiating that joy inwardly and outwardly to the world. Now, when the joy fades away, Equanimity is present. Radiate, please, inwardly and outwardly, in all directions. No pain in heart, and the joy has faded away. Just equanimity, full of wisdom, remaining unaffected by the news, and whatever else that can bother our equanimous, peaceful mind. And with a sincere commitment to cultivate these divine abodes, such as loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, making a sincere commitment to these in our lives. May these qualities, sublime qualities, be healing toward myself, and may I forgive myself for not understanding and move on with this precious life, radiating these qualities outwardly as well. You may now come out of your meditation. Time for reading. Thank you for meditating with me. So we have two readings for today. The parable of the poisoned arrow. What we will do is we will read it together. I like to hear your voice as we read. And then when you read, please see if there is any line, any word that captures your attention. And feel free to share that uh, with us at the end of the reading. It's only 2 pages. The parable of the arrow, or the parable of the poisoned arrow, is a Buddhist parable that illustrates the skeptic and pragmatic themes of the Cūḷamāluṅkya Sutta, the shorter instructions to Mālukya, which is part of the middle-length discourses, Majjhima Nikāya. The sutta begins at Jetavana, where the monk Māluṅkyaputta is troubled by Gautama Buddha's silence on the 14 unanswerable questions, which include queries about the nature of the cosmos and what happens to the Buddha after death. Māluṅkyaputta then meets with the Buddha and asks him for the answers to these questions. He says that if he fails to respond, Māluṅkya will renounce his teachings. The Buddha responds by first stating that he never promised to reveal ultimate metaphysical truths such as those an then uses the story of a man who has been shot with a poisoned arrow to illustrate that those questions are irrelevant to his teachings. It is just as if a man were wounded with an arrow thickly smeared with poison. His friends and companions, kinsmen and relatives would provide him with a surgeon, and the man would say, I won't have this arrow removed until I know whether the man who wounded me was a noble warrior, a priest, a merchant, or a worker. He would say, I won't have this arrow removed until I know the given name and clan name of the man who wounded me, whether he was tall, medium, or short, whether he was dark, ruddy brown, or golden colored, until I know his home village, town, or city, whether the bow with which I was wounded was a long bow, or a crossbow, whether the bowstring with which I was wounded was fiber, bamboo threads, sinew, hemp, or bark, whether the shaft with which I was wounded was wild or cultivated, whether the feathers of the shaft with which I was wounded were those of a vulture, a stork, a hawk, or a peacock, or another bird, whether the shaft with which I was wounded was bound with the sinew of an ox, a water buffalo, a langur, or a monkey. He would say, I won't have this arrow removed, whether the shaft with which I was wounded was that of a common arrow, a curved arrow, a barbed, a carved-toothed, or an slender arrow. The man would die, and those things would still remain unknown to him. Thich Nhat Hanh comments on where the parable of the poisoned arrow illustrates Gautama Buddha's anti-metaphysical views. The Buddha always told his disciples not to waste their time and energy in metaphysical speculation. Whenever he was asked a metaphysical question, he remained silent. Instead, he directed his disciples toward practical efforts. Questioned one day about the problem of the infinity of the world, the Buddha said, whether the world is finite or infinite, limited or unlimited, the problem of your liberation remains the same. Another time he said, suppose a man is struck by a poisoned arrow and the doctor wishes to take out the arrow immediately. Suppose the man does not want the arrow removed until he knows who shot it, his age, his parents, and why he shot it. What would happen if he were to wait until all these questions have been answered? The man might die first. Life is so short, it
Mm.
must not be spent in endless metaphysical speculation that does not bring us any closer to the truth. Sangha Rakshita notes that the important thing is to get rid of the arrow, not to inquire where it came from. The parable is considered a teaching on being practical and dealing with the situation at hand. So that is one. Um, Maybe we can come back to the other reading after we discuss this first one, or do you want to continue reading?
We can discuss.
We can discuss. Okay. So, any comment, anything that captured your attention? Yes, which which is why we meditated. Maybe we are little closer to liberation now. Right. Yes. That is an important point you raised. Thank you. Anything else? Of course, I get curious about the beginning of the world and the ending of the world and what happens to me, what happens to you, what happens to the Buddha. All these questions are very interesting. But yet, if I'm not enlightened or if I don't know what, how to alleviate my own suffering, I'm still in the samsara, suffering, and I'm struggling here, not knowing how to overcome my own suffering. And that is perhaps one way to look at this teaching. Māluṅkya was not willing to work on his own liberation. He was kind of confronting the Buddha. So you should answer these questions, but the Buddha had a way of like tapani. These questions were called tapani, that he would put them aside. He did not want to get monks interested in these discussions. He knew some answers, but he was not sharing them, saying that this would not help you to liberate your minds from suffering. That is the essence of his teachings. Anything you want to share? On Zoom?
What I feel that with new advances in cosmology is happening every year and every decade, there's so much of this speculative thought, which
Yeah,
undergoes transformation, and then uh, that human being in awe of nature as such, and how why it happens, what is happening, and then practically, I mean, just to quote something, maybe it must have come to notice of many people, but uh, that there are trillion of galaxies, and each galaxies has billions of stars,
yeah.
and then it's infinite and infinite, one cannot even fathom, but to be occupied in those uh, things, and then trying to, a much larger part of it is already in Indian tradition in form of astrology, but then it doesn't make nothing much has changed despite all that. So, and what practically matters is our own pragmatic approach
Mm.
to how life can be made better here and now in this world, rather than the one which will come next
Mm.
after death or before death, and then the whole universe. This is what I feel.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes, I remember as a child, um, we ask children what you like to do in the future. They say, I want to be a scientist. I want to be an astronaut. To know the end, to know things about the universe, what happens in Mars, and I think scientists do that work. It is this child who becomes a scientist one day, and I think that those sciences are not discouraged. They can do those things, but this is Māluṅkya is a monk here,
Mm.
and he's forgetting why he became a monk, and this can
Mm.
happen to
Right,
monks, and
right.
he's kind of here reminded of you know his job here is to discover his purpose again and kindle that passion and not get into thoughts, because by thinking there's no way we can come to an end of these
Right.
questions that we have. One time the Buddha said, subject of the universe is unthinkable. By
Mm.
thinking you can't come to a conclusion about it, and you will go mad if you just
Mm.
think and think and think and think.
Yes. Mm.
So this is
Mm.
kind of something the Buddha discouraged.
Right.
But scientists have developed, these astronauts and world sciences, they have developed these very meticulous instruments. You can view the moon, perhaps live now, and you can view the Mars and get photographs. Of course, they put these pieces together and share it within a day or two with the world. And that curiosity, of course, is harmless, I would say. But if you don't work on your anger, for example, and there is so much suffering at home because of this anger that you have not worked on, because you are bleeding here, you kind of also cause wounds in other people in their lives. This is something the Buddha um, looked at. He for the first time, he removed the arrow of anger from his heart and taught other beings to follow the path and said, I abandoned the arrow of anger, and could you please also follow the path? I can only show the path, but some people, I teach them how to go to west, but they end up going to the south. So this, the teachings, the pragmatic aspect of the teaching is missed here. Anything else before? Yeah?
I just feel like I definitely lose a lot of time and energy for speculation because it just makes me more curious, right? Where the world comes from.
Mm-hmm.
One of these sci-fi and all kinds. I think I made up all kinds of conclusions about how we get our spirituality and where it goes and stuff like that. But yes, in the end, even reading this story so many times, I think it's good to be reminded again that's not the main focus. That's
Mm-hmm.
not where we should focus on. Focus on the wrong part. That doesn't help us in the
Yeah, well, the problem with all the sci-fi movies, we can watch as many movies as we can, but they can give us some insight that adding more curiosity to our minds, but it never ends. I mean, it's good we watch these and we end it there. But sometimes day and night pass, we don't even realize it, and it's our precious time, yeah, and we get hooked up with this
Yeah.
creativity out there, right? Um, and we want a bigger screen. That craving never is appeased. Okay, shall we go to
What
the
was the
next one?
question, Bante? We could be on
She was not
online.
asking a question. She was sharing how she gets interested in sci-fi movies
Mm.
and endless speculations about
Mm.
the curiosity sparking things out there in the world. And
Mm.
days go by, we forget. Um,
Yeah.
some people actually get so glued to, so attached to them, and they forget to eat. They forget to drink water. Some basic things in life.
This there's this James Webb telescope which has come up by the NASA and all, and the amazing things that coming out of I mean, a very realistic part of the sci-fi movies, which is kind of in reality known by the James Webb telescope. It is quite gluing. One can get glued for hours. You are right, Bante.
Do they have the do they have a live view or something out there?
Yeah, if you go to the website, and
Oh,
then there are many scientists like
mm,
Neil deGrasse Tyson, and then earlier it was Carl Sagan, and then there are
mm,
many contemporary Brain Cox and all those. So they
mm,
are doing amazing things, and they make it intelligible for lay people, to
mm,
be able to understand
yeah.
what new reaches of universe are getting manifest. Yeah.
So there is another instance. This was Sunakatta, another monk
Uh-huh.
who didn't like the Buddha because the Buddha did not perform psychic powers, and
Uh,
and
yeah.
he quit being a monk and he started criticizing the Buddha. He was actually one of the attendant monks of the Buddha also.
Okay.
So you can get so close with an intention of seeing psychic powers of the Buddha, and then the Buddha actually, so like here, the Buddha says, I never promised to reveal these to you. And so the Buddha uses that same questioning, like, I never promised psychic powers to you. It's up to you to learn and practice the teachings and overcome any suffering. And I can see that, the Buddha was kind of reminding monks of the the way the teachings work. It's not to see the end of the world. He did teach some of those teachings. The the Partika Sutta, Aganya Sutta, these are called Buddhist Genesis, the origin of the universe, how it takes millions of years for it to be formed, and then how it disappears over millions of, maybe trillions of years. So,
Yes.
and endless trillions of galaxies, all these are
Mm.
there, but the fact that we only have very few teachings of these show that the Buddha primarily taught that four truths: the truth of suffering and the origin of it and the overcoming of it and the path. That's it. So that's it. That when someone was grief stricken, he would teach how to overcome it. It's all about the mind. So because we have only a couple of minutes left, let's quickly read the next part so that we cover teachings about some other teachings about arrows. This is called Cūḷamāluṅkya Jataka. The Bodhisattva, the Buddha to be in a previous birth, was once Indra, king of the gods. A young Brahmin had been sent to Taxila to study archery, and he became a master, equaling the skill of his teacher. The teacher was so impressed, he gave the young archer his daughter to marry. As the archer traveled back home with his new wife, they came to a forest where a wild elephant was rampaging, and local people told him the forest was too dangerous to pass through. But the archer knew his skill would protect him and ignored them. And when the elephant charged, he shot an arrow straight through its head, killing it. The archer continued on and came to a spot where 50 thieves were working the road, and local people warned him not to go there. Again the archer ignored the advice, and he encountered the thieves. Their leader was a good judge of character and could tell the archer was noble and heroic. So he told his men not to risk an attack. Feeling safe, the archer sent his wife to ask the thieves for some of the venison they were eating, but they ignored their leader's demand to treat them well and gave her raw meat instead of roasted. The archer responded to the insult by shooting 49 of the thieves, but he ran out of the arrows before he could shoot their leader because he had used one arrow on the elephant. Instead, he knocked the leader down and sat on his chest. He asked his wife to get his sword, but she had fallen in love at first sight with the chief and gave it to him instead. He cut off the archer's head, then he and the woman took off together. As they traveled, the chief realized that someone of her ilk would do the same thing to him some day, so he decided to get rid of her. When they came upon a flooded stream where a crocodile lived, the thief needed to help the woman across. She told him to put all her jewelry in a bag and take it across first, then come back for her. But after he got to the other side, he ran all away and she slumped down on the ground, screaming in anguish. The Bodhisattva in heaven looked down on the world and saw the woman weeping. Thinking she deserved to be mocked and rebuked, he took the form of a jackal and had Matali, his charioteer, and Panchasika, one of heaven's top musicians, change into a fish and a bird separate respectively. The Bodhisattva stood with a piece of meat in his mouth, where the woman could see him. Then, to illustrate the woman's stupidity, the fish jumped out of the stream. The Bodhisattva dropped his meat to pick up the fish, but the fish jumped back into the stream, and the bird flew off with the meat. The woman laughed at what she had just seen and called the Bodhisattva a fool. She answered that it is easy to see another. He answered that it is easy to see another's faults, but hard to see one's own. What is the cost of losing both a husband and a lover? Understanding his point, the woman vowed to find another husband and remain faithful to him. The Bodhisattva was doubtful, saying if she betrayed a husband once, she would do it again. In the lifetime of the Buddha, the archer and his wife were earlier births of one of the Buddha's disciples and the disciple's former wife. This disciple began to miss his former wife. and with his wife's encouragement, was considering leaving the monastic life. The Buddha told the disciple this story so he knew that in the past his wife had caused him to be beheaded. After talking to the Buddha, this disciple gained new understanding and chose to stay. So, so the two stories, two pieces don't necessarily connect, but you can see this is about an arrow also, someone who has the skills to shoot an arrow. We all have perhaps done it in our childhood, um, but I have never harmed an animal with an arrow. So uh, that is a good thing. Anything interesting in this story?
I don't understand. So the teacher gave his daughter to the son. It doesn't seem like they really have a relationship.
No, they were married because he was the best student, and this
It seems more complicated than
that is right. That perhaps the teacher thought this is like the best gift that a student can earn those days. Okay, so this happened in many other stories. Also, the teacher would reward him with the precious gift of the best love he could give. So, but in her heart, maybe she was also liking this whole thing that she also get. You can see how the minds can change. And here the arrow is actually the desire, attachment, and how attachment strikes us, and then we fall out of love, just as we fall in love, and we fall out of it. And so, yeah, please continue on if you have more things to share. Yeah.
more than
Right. Yeah, it needs a little bit of commentary. I was trying to find a story that is connected with our previous thinking, like something that connects with it, and also something in simple English, something in short. We have a translation of this birth story, Jataka story from 1887. The English of it was something
Oh,
I could not read one, two lines. I did not understand most of it. So I'm thankful to the translator of this the, this version of it. So yeah, so it shows how the minds can change. When we meditate, we look at five hindrances. The first one is how sensual add impurity to your heart, and it's hard to stay calm with sensual lust. And then aversion. So much aversion also is creates a muddy place in the heart. It's not so easy to concentrate. And restlessness. We are restless. We want to be somewhere else. I wish I was, having ice cream. I wish I was driving or on a road trip, so we don't feel like meditating. and and then um, doubt whether this meditation is going to work. And sloth and torpor, we get sleepy, tired, and so instead of getting some rest, we just give up on meditating completely. So these are called hindrances. So in stories like these, encourage. See, toward the end, there was a monk who was struggling, who maybe he went on alms round to village, and he saw his former wife, who also had feelings for this monk, and say, "Come back home. I miss you." And the Buddha illustrated this story to show that, yeah, you would have gone home and indulged, but again, remember this same woman put you in trouble, that it went to the point of get yourself getting beheaded because she betrayed you. um, and so it connects with another story, and these stories are um, they have become creative drama in Sri Lanka. So there's Maname drama that's very popular. It's part of the culture, and they have pandals, really huge structures with all the lights and illustrations. People play these stories, kind of reminding people, viewers of the danger cycle of birth and death called samsara, and asking them to overcome their troubles and bring urgency to meditate and see their defilements. So we have 3 minutes before we wrap up. So, and anything you want to share?
I don't know. I was thinking when I was reading it that some of it is about the goal of balance and reflection, because and we get off track and then we have to come back to the middle. I mean, that it seemed like the first story had the just a over focus on knowing about the arrow and about the man and who did it, and it really throws you off track.
Yeah.
And you can't really reflect on anything else, and probably reflection, and you might use another word, focuses us to some extent. When something doesn't go right.
Let me share something that our, guest priest Rob Hardy shared when he had a bicycle accident once. This was in Washington, D.C. He was talking about the Buddha's arrow parable in a preaching he gave. It's available in YouTube, and I was listening to it, and he was blaming himself a lot. Why did this happen to me in the middle of COVID? And so I'm supposed to prepare meals for my families. I should have gone slow. So look how the mind gets involved in all the stories, like could haves and ifs and all that. So he was illustrating it beautifully. And actually, that prompted me to uh, research more into this arrow thing about Buddhism. So yeah, so that's all the proliferations in the mind and get so tired with all the thinking. Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, I'm done.
Okay.
That was it.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you, Rob, for sharing. Kind of, he's a Unitarian minister, but in this sermon, he mixed up the arrow parable with his experience very beautifully, and yeah. So, anything else? No, it will feel like arrows to sit too long now. Let's share merits and conclude today's teaching. Please join me in sharing merits. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the teachings, and may they long protect sadhu. Thank you. Good night and have a
Thank
beautiful
you. Thank you,
rest of
Bhante.
your day.
Good night.